Hi everyone, good evening. It is Monday. I think it's November 13th, and we are just continuing our series as to how to start a rescue. We had a lot of people over the past 5.5 years reach out and say, "You are living my dream. How did you do it? I don't even know where to begin." And so I have sat down with numerous people and spent sometimes 2-3 hours talking to them about it. I thought, why not just put it out there in case somebody that doesn't have the chance to come into town and to sit face to face, to be able to walk you through the steps as to how you can set it up, how I did it. Disclaimer, I am an attorney, but by no means is this considered legal advice in any way. It's just how I did it. And I would say, if you have a dream in your heart, don't let the fear of not knowing how to do it, not knowing anything about it, or not even knowing how to begin, let it stop you. I think the scariest part sometimes is just diving in and saying that you have enough courage to try, even if you fail. Let's see. Oh, that's Legacy behind us and Sabrina. So say hi, everyone. They're going on a walk on the homestead. So if you see dogs walking by, it's still pretty early, and it's a beautiful night, a beautiful Monday night. So this one is not going to be fun because a lot of the stuff when it comes to setting up a nonprofit and legal entity is actually kind of boring. So while you could pay an attorney, maybe sometimes I've seen attorneys charge about $5,000 to set up a nonprofit, or if you can find an attorney that will do it pro bono, that's a great way too. But don't let that dissuade you from being afraid to set it up yourself, because you really can. And so what we talked about last time, I'll do a quick recap, and then we'll kind of get into, I think today we're going to talk about some annual filings and super fun stuff like zoning. So if anybody has followed our rescue and our page, you're probably pretty familiar with our CUP, conditional use permits, and some of the battles we face with that. So it all starts with a dream. It all starts with you. What do you want? If you want to start a rescue, think about how you want it to be structured. Will it be just for dogs, just for cats, just for horses? This series really is kind of targeted towards animal rescue, just because that's what I know. So I started this thinking I wanted this to be a senior dog sanctuary, and I wanted it to be on my home, on my property. And I knew that I'd always been from a big city, and I knew now that I lived in Kansas that I could actually afford land. And so I was going to, and I did, I bought a little farm, a little 5-acre farm, and I renovated the barn to be an old dog home, kind of like an old folks home, where I knew that if I was the only one taking care of them, just like I did with my 2 senior dogs in my home, I would take care of them in the morning, go to work during the day, and then take care of them at night, because old dogs sleep, right? And a lot of people overlook old dogs in shelter, so they're in shelters, so there is a huge need for that. Now, as you're probably aware, we have expanded to not only save old dogs, but young dogs, puppies, kittens, cats, tons and tons of medical animals. I even think we saved a guinea pig once. So we try not to discriminate against any animals. If there's a way to help, that we will. One thing that we do currently right now is we truly focus on helping the medical cases that come into an emergency vet. We always try to keep pets with their loving owners, so we put out fundraisers, and you guys are the direct reason that we have been able to save and keep together so many, especially ones that are in loving homes but can't care for their animals. So there's a million different ways behind the scenes to where we have evolved to get to where we are today. But know that it's a process, and it's a journey, and nothing, as everybody knows in life, is ever smooth. And anything that's worth doing is never easy. But what I will tell you is that it's possible. So if you have a dream in your heart, I'll help you with these steps. It is possible. You can do this. It really just takes reading and giving yourself the time to understand. So know your mission. Put your dream out there. Believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, you can't ask others to believe in you. So incredibly important. We talked about a name. Get your name. Make sure nobody else has your name. Then get yourself incorporated. Now, what I didn't talk about are there different ways that you can set up your legal entity, an LLC, a corporation, an S Corp. To be honest, if you're a nonprofit, the way that I went, we are a nonprofit corporation in Kansas. That was just the easiest route for us. We don't own stock. We do have a board of directors. We have 6 board of directors. pick people you trust. You need at least 3 to be a 501c3. Like I said, that's incredibly important. You want people to recognize that you are legit, because if you can be a nonprofit corporation and not a 501c3. And what that means is that they can't deduct from their federal taxes. So you want to be able to send them tax receipts, and you have an EIN number. We talked about that before. It's usually free. I put the link in the description of this. And so we are going to give an update on Tobin's surgery. I know it got sidetracked on this. Good and not so good news with Tobin. He has a degenerative, his spine and his knees are so incredibly bad that he's living in extreme pain. So we are going to look into acupuncture, and we are trying a new shot. It starts with an L. We're doing a write-up, and so we'll post this. Unfortunately, the cancerous bumps are not the biggest concern with his quality of life, so they opted not to put him through the pain of having those removed, and we are going to go into alternative treatment and ways to manage his pain. Anybody who knows pities, this boy is incredibly stoic, and he's a beautiful, beautiful soul. So we're going to help him get the best quality of life possible. So we'll have a post on him soon, but he's awake, he's doing well, and we're going to address the most immediate need on him right now. Okay, back to what I was talking about. What was I talking about? Okay, we did the mission statement. Okay, the EIN, and the form, I think form 1023 EZ. It's still $275. Now, I scrolled through it again. I hadn't looked at it in 8 years. There's another bug. Completely overwhelming if it's new to you. That's okay. Take a deep breath. A lot of it goes into like churches. It's not going to be specific to you. So it's going to be NA. A lot of it goes into private foundations. Break it down. Again, what we're talking about solely in this series is setting up an animal rescue. Don't be afraid of the form. There's an instruction manual to it too. I think I put the link on there. If you can't find the link, just put instructions to form 1023 EZ. Now, why I think it's important to do all these steps first is because, excuse me, the way I knew how to do this was basically to be self-funded. And I know that sounds scary, like, oh my God, I gotta have a ton of money. Number one, I don't know how to save money. Number two, I know how to spend it. And I love to spend it on people I love and animals I love. So you can do this in your own way. And that's kind of what we'll talk about, how I did it in my way, which isn't always everyone's right way. But, so don't let that stop you. But if you have started your corporation, let's say you set up your nonprofit and you've been operating for years, and let's say you have more money than $10,000 or something like that, then you have to do the longer form. So if you're brand new, you have no donations, no assets, do the 1023 EZ. I think that's, again, this is not me being a lawyer. This is just me telling you how I did it, because ultimately you're brand new. So they try to, the government really does try to help you set this up and get your feet running. And I think the instructions are incredible, and it will walk you through it. So take a deep breath. Don't get overwhelmed. Give yourself time. And yeah, you can do it. I promise. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So we've got that. Let's say, so now you're a corporation. You're all set up. What next? Well, things to consider. You're going to need a separate bank account. Never, ever, ever commingle your money with your nonprofit's money. So set it up. You've got this separate organization. Go to any bank. I would say go to your local bank and say, and keep in mind, what are your goals? Are your goals to be small and just be, here's what I want to do. I want to save a couple dogs in my lifetime, and this is my thing. Or do you want to grow? So if you want to grow, I would say pick a bank that has nonprofit experience. Just talk to bankers, tell them what your dream is. Funny story on that, when you go into a bank and you ask them for money, I think I went into 5 different banks and I shared my dream, and I had just bought the farm, and 5 different banks laughed at me when I asked them for a loan because I had no collateral and I had no donations or anything like that, and I had just bought the farm and a mortgage. And so don't be afraid for people to laugh at you. That's okay. It's not their dream. It's your dream. It's your heart. Put it out there. The right people will come along. It was actually the 6th bank when, I was just about to give up and say, screw it. They gave me a $100,000 personal loan, and that's kind of how I got started, but we'll talk about that another time. But your 990s are your annual filings, 990. So you got to have a record keeping system, you've got to get a separate bank set up, and you've got to log every single financial transaction, because honesty and transparency are everything. So especially when it comes to donors' money. And you might be the first and only donor for a while, and that's okay. But remember, even if you're not starting large scale, if you're a nonprofit and you're set up as a 501c3, and let's just say you want to foster and adopt out one single dog a year, all those expenses that go into that dog that you are putting in, or that cat, those can be your donations towards your nonprofit, and they can be deductible. So if you're buying food, the medical care, and so forth, you can start small. There is nothing wrong with starting small. When we opened this Red Barn, we had 3 dogs on the first day. 3 for me. I think I shared this before, was completely overwhelming. I cried every single night that I worried that I wasn't giving them a good life, and every single morning I would wake up and there'd be diarrhea everywhere. And so my life was filled with tears and diarrhea, and I wasn't used to that in any sense. And I realized that these dogs wouldn't be alive without us. And once you shift your mindset and say, and you know that what's pure inside your heart, everything changes. And I kind of wish I would have taken a step back and realized, just enjoy the journey. It's such a beautiful journey, from no matter where you start to where you end up going. Life is full of surprises, and even with the tragedies and sorrow, I promise it's always beautiful. It just depends on how you look at it. On our very worst days, every morning we wake up and we are blessed and grateful to take care of these animals. So if you go in with a mentality that it is a ton of work, I guarantee you it will be more work than you can handle, and you will fail. I think the average span for a person in rescue is probably 5 years. The suicide rate is incredibly high. Why? Because it is truly hard to not be able to save all the animals that you know that are out there, and without you, they don't see tomorrow. But it's taking a step back and realizing what you can do right now with today is always good enough if your heart is pure, and again, your intentions and the why behind it. If you give everything you have, you put your head on your pillow at night and you know that God has the rest to do. We are not God. We don't pretend to be. So why do we put that burden on us? And none of us would ever put an animal to sleep, especially unless it's obviously a humane euthanasia. But I got off track. So, record keeping. That's not the point of this live. How to start a rescue. How do you do it? Okay, so we've walked through that. Record keeping, bank account. In Kansas, you have to register a charitable organization registration. What that means, if you're going to solicit or take in donations, you just have to fill out a little piece of paper form online. I think it's $20 again. It is an annual requirement, just like your 990s. And it's straightforward. You know how I learned that we had to fill it out? When I found out we didn't fill it out the first year. So you have to do that. Make sure you write that one down. It's very simple, but you always want to be able to solicit donations. And because I was the only donor the very first year, so it all worked out. But know your state and local requirements too. Now, we are a licensed animal shelter and animal rescue network in the state of Kansas. We are also a licensed animal shelter in the state of Missouri. Every single state has different requirements, and they're all governed by different legislation. And I'm just going to use Kansas, for example. In Kansas, it's the Kansas Pet Act. I think that's what it is. It's the Kansas Pet Act. And in that, you can just Google it and just read through it. And it runs through the requirements of fosters, the safety requirements, the health requirements, all these things that you have to know if you're going to operate a rescue or a shelter. Now, what's the difference between a rescue network and an animal shelter? Well, it's actually pretty simple in the state of Kansas, because if you're allowed to have up to 19 animals, so including 19, and anything above that would be an animal shelter. Now, the difference between a rescue network and a shelter too, if you're just a rescue network, you cannot take in strays. So you can't have a contract with the city and taken strays to your property, and it is property location dependent. So on 223rd here, we are an animal rescue network. We are not a shelter, but we have another shelter where we can have more than 20 animals there, and we can have a contract with the city. Now we are, phenomenal news too, I don't think I've shared this, we are finalizing our purchase from the city of Osawatomie, which has truly been incredible and invited us in with loving arms. We are purchasing the land to take over the pound in Osawatomie. So we are expected to close this Friday, and then we will be an animal shelter there. So that's a little bonus of amazing things to come, and we'll talk about that in a whole nother series. But so animal shelter, rescue network. Here's what I would say. Let's say you're starting small, and you get yourself all set up. You have no funding other than yourself. Get your rescue network license. Now, you also have to know what your city and your county codes are. How many animals can you have in your property? So let's say Spring Hill, 4 animals. And I'm just making this up. I actually don't know what the number in like the city of Spring Hill. I think we're outside city limits here. You can actually have as many personal animals as you want in like Farmville, whatever, wherever we are here, outside of the city limits. So our neighbors who are protesting us, they could have like 8 or 10 animals, and maybe 19, 20, and they wouldn't care, as long as you're not. Now the kicker is, if you're going to adopt an animal out, then you have to be registered with the state as a rescue network or as a shelter, because legally they want to protect the animals, and there has to be someone to regulate it. Because, for instance, let's say an unexpected litter happens and you didn't spay or neuter your dog or cat, and you want to adopt out the puppies. Technically, you are supposed to be registered with the state if you're going to do this as a continuous thing. If you're just giving them away, if you're charging a fee, then again, yeah, you should be registered as a breeder. But because here's the thing too, you can't separate a mama from her puppies before 8 weeks or they're weaned. So there are stipulations and regulations within there that are very important in the Kansas Pet Act. So know your state and local requirements. Very, very important. Every single state is different, and don't wait the hard way for the state to say you messed up. Be proactive, read. I really don't sit around and read, but if it's something that I know will help the rescue, or we need to know, go all in, understand it. And if you share it with others, talk about it, see, what others are doing too. So there's a wealth of information out there, especially with the internet. The bugs are nuts. I don't know why it's 70 degrees right now when it's November. It should be colder. I like the cold. But know your state and local requirements. What else did I miss? Zoning. If you're going to go to let's say you want land. Okay, I did the same thing. I wanted land. I bought the land. I knew that this land allowed kennels through a conditional use permit. So I purchased it. And so you got to know what the definition of kennels are in your county, in your city. And when you go over the number of animals, set up a meeting with your planning commissioner and the staff. That was the very first thing I did when I came out here. And I sat with them. And I sat with them for 3 hours, over 3 hours, and we were just going over back and forth. And really, what we came down to is the state does not require you to be an animal shelter and be licensed as an animal shelter if you have less than 20 animals. And I have never had any intention of having more than 19 animals on this property, so we got an exemption. We had a letter written up, and we've relied on that since, so that we didn't have to go through the CUP process, because again, I was so brand new. It was just me at the time, and some incredible volunteers that really kicked this off. So get to know your planning commission staff. Now that kind of goes into, the staff has changed, and we got into our CUP. Now when we purchased the 40 acres behind us, once again, a kennel is a permitted use. Now, if you followed our journey, I could get into the golden criteria, but what I will tell you is check the zoning. Sometimes the zoning is just already approved, and I will tell you that's a huge burden that can be lifted off of you if you plop yourself into somewhere that is already approved. Second, get to know your lovely neighbors around you, because they're going to be the ones that show up and protest you. Funny story is, a couple of them actually helped me start this barn, and I think God works in mysterious ways, and we wouldn't be where we are today without them. So no matter what is said or what is done, ultimately we only wish them peace, and we wish that they would give us the peace as well, because our peace won't disturb them with helping to build more in our land. But I will leave that aside. Know your zoning, get to know your neighbors, or hopefully you have land without any neighbors. That's even better. They can't protest you. But it depends on where you are. It depends on what your goals are and what you want to do. You could live in an apartment, save one dog, and get your rescue license in Kansas and do it that way. Don't be afraid to just get started. Like I said, I started in an apartment. I filed everything, living in Overland Park, Kansas, in corporate housing. I had never seen this farm. I didn't have a real estate agent yet. And then God just led me along the way. So have faith in your journey. No one's journey is going to be the same. So what's unique to you, that'll be your path. But these are the legal steps that you got to get going. And then ultimately, make sure you have insurance. Insurance is so important. Liability insurance, property insurance. Get board of directors insurance. It's actually not that much. Ultimately, you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your people. Get volunteer waivers in place. Don't know how to write them? Copy one off of the internet. That's exactly what it is. We are in the age of AI. Type it in the chat GPT, whatever that is, and then look at what others have created. Volunteer waivers are everywhere. What that means is that if someone comes onto your property or meets one of your animals, they are assuming the risk of getting bit. And that's incredibly important with cats or with dogs. Cats too, they scratch you. You never know what an animal is going to do, especially when it comes to a rescue, because you don't know their past. You're never going to know all their triggers, and everything we do every single day, we are assuming that risk and incurring potential liability. Now, I will share with you, you might get sued. We've been sued. Why? We put a dog, one way before we had property, before we had land, and this is what other rescues were doing too, they would put a dog in a boarding facility. Okay, so we used a trusted boarding facility that a lot of other rescues use, and they recommended. And so we brought a dog over there that was dog aggressive. Okay, so that means if he saw another dog, he would react to that dog and want to potentially fight him. Now, this was a dog that we had taken to PetSmart, we had around kids, beautiful boxer, just an incredible demeanor, but some dogs cannot get along with other dogs. However, and this is incredibly common, and those who know or have had a reactive dog know, if a dog can't get the dog they're trying to get, and you are interfering, or another dog near them comes by, they're going to redirect, and they're going to turn on the human being or the animal they can release this energy on, just because they're going for that dog. But he actually one of the handlers at the boarding facility that we were paying to take care of him accidentally left another dog out and opened our dog's kennel, and those two dogs started to fight. Our dog redirected on her, and she sued us. So make sure you understand, the more that you can control your environment, the more that you have the people that you know and that you trust taking care of your animals, the better. That is why we will never put our animals in a boarding facility again. That's where KCMO, that's where our next location was spawned, because that's our location for our reactive dogs that just about every other rescue turned their back on. Why? Because of the liability, because it's an incredible amount of work and investment, because not many people want to adopt a single dog that could be a liability if they got loose and they bit a neighbor or they bit the neighbor's dog. And so we want to give them as loving and wonderful a life as possible, but we want to control the people who are smart about safety and handling and know the risks, and we take care of them. That's why you see our dogs out there with muzzles walking at KCMO. Why? Because it's in a neighborhood that we can't control. So if a loose dog comes up to our dog is at least protected from that dog, as well as that dog is protected from our dog too. So there's a lot of things that go into lessons that we can go into when you're actually running your rescue. But to summarize today, because it's short and sweet and super not fun stuff, I think we're a half hour in already, something like that. record keeping, bank account, track everything, honesty and transparency in everything you do, no matter what. Get a treasurer off the bat, get your board of directors, get your bylaws drafted, get those in shape, know the people who are going to help you run this rescue, and know what you want. Do you want to start small? Do you want to grow? Do you want land? You know, how is that going to work? How do you find land? Talk to your real estate agent, talk to your friends. You never know who else has a dream that you do too. I say everything is heaven connected. I had a beautiful friend who had lost her son, and we met through grief, and she introduced me to the realtor and the story behind how this farm, it never went on the market. And it just was just one amazing day, and it was a friend of hers that hadn't put the house on the market. And I promise, if this is where you are meant to be, if you have a calling in your heart to start a rescue, you can do it. Don't be afraid of the steps. It's just a lot of reading. If you want to hire a lawyer for peace of mind, go ahead. Especially if you're stuck on something, you know, and that's okay too. I hate to see people throw money away if they don't need to, because the only way I knew how to start it was to do it myself, and that's why I just started going to banks and asking them for loans. I knew I had great credit, and that's kind of how I went through college. You know, I took out student loans then. You are investing, if you're investing in your dream, if you're investing in yourself, it is never money that is not well spent, because you're going for a larger purpose, to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and people will come. So have faith. Tomorrow we will probably, I think I covered everything on here. Tomorrow we'll probably talk a little bit more about fundraising and kind of kicking it off as to how to actually run a rescue, and we'll shift focus a little bit. Maybe we'll bring on some people, because at one point it was Jane and I being the med coordinators, the vet transporters, literally everything. So when you start small, you wear every single hat, and you learn everything along the way, and then you learn that you need people that know more than you, so that they can be better than you and improve you and improve the process. But enjoy the journey, have faith. Like and follow our page if you haven't, because we have so many amazing adoptable animals that truly need homes. And I think one thing to our discredit is people see how loved they are with us, and then they go and they want to save the ones that are in the kill shelter, that are sad, and those photos, of course, they tug at your heart. But remember, all of our animals in our care were once those, and that's exactly where every time someone adopts or fosters with us, then we go and save another life. So the ripple effect of let us take the risk on, versus you going directly to a shelter. I always say that, we know, because we have the experience, we have the knowledge, and you guys have the heart and homes for that. So thank you guys for everything you do. I wish everyone luck, and always remember, it's never too late for happily ever after. Have a great night, everyone.